Okay, so the third episode of season 2 of The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch just dropped, and I've got to talk about it. It was a really good episode. Before I get into it, please hit like, please subscribe, and as I'm going through it, please comment below and let me know what you thought about the episode. Was it a great episode? Was it the worst episode? What do you think is going on at Skinwalker Ranch? Please let me know. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, first of all, they get Colonel John Alexander out to the ranch. Now, he's an old, paranormal researcher, UFO researcher. Obviously, he was a colonel. He's a fairly big name in the paranormal circles. And I've always liked him. Sometimes he says some pretty far out stuff. Honestly, he used to be too far out for me in some ways. But the more research I have done into the paranormal, the less out there he has seemed, because the truth seems to be pretty weird. And we'll get to that. That's one of the reasons I love Skinwalker Ranch so much, is because it is truly a crossroads of the paranormal. You've got cryptids, aliens, ghosts, all sorts of crazy stuff, portals, other dimensional stuff. You know, it all has a nexus right at Skinwalker Ranch. And it's actually what led me to explore all those various avenues. So, what does John Alexander say? Well, he opens up talking about portals. Now, that's one of the big things that is a recurring theme of Skinwalker Ranch, is that possibly there is a portal there, or conditions that allow for portals to form, or technology placed there underground or in the sky that again allows for portals to form. And that was reinforced in the first episode of the season, where they find the petroglyphs on the rocks that hint at the existence of portals, and that Native Americans hundreds of years ago knew that there was a portal there. So even back then, that was part of the mythology of the ranch, potentially. And, you know, I don't think that we accurately know exactly what those petroglyphs were describing and saying, but that is definitely one possible translation of them. Specifically, John Alexander says there is a multi-dimensional reality present at the ranch, and at times those dimensions overlap. What does that mean? Well, obviously we're getting back to the portal thing again. So when those dimensions overlap, that allows for the existence of portals. So, of course, Travis comes up with an idea. He always has these great science fiction-y ideas to determine the existence of portals. Possibly they can be detected by the refraction of light. So they get some guys with lasers to come out, and they, beam the ranch with light. And of course, they don't find anything. Sometimes they find stuff, sometimes they don't. But as is very common with the ranch, they don't find what they were looking for, but they find something else that may be even more interesting. Well, I mean, I say that. I don't know what could be more interesting than a portal to another dimension. So, maybe not, but still pretty interesting. So, one guy, the other scientist guy, I forget his name, he has a lightning detector on him, and the lightning detector is going off multiple times, even though there is no lightning. So they call into their security guy who's looking at the technical readout, and they say, well, do you see anything weird? And he says, yeah, there's a big heat signature right over you. So what is that about? So there's some weird electromagnetic thing going on that has nothing to do with the lasers or the equipment they're using. At the same time, there's a big, strange, anomalous heat signature over them. Does that mean there is a UFO over them, or a portal over them? Who knows? But that is fascinating. And I think that's probably the standout for me of the episode. That's what made my hair stand up more than anything else. But there were some other really interesting things that happened in this episode. So let's talk about him. Okay, so they get this old sheriff out. The sheriff who was, well, I mean, a retired sheriff, but he was the sheriff back in the days of the Myers family, who were the owners of the ranch before the Shermans. In George Knapp's book, he calls them the Gormans, and that's still how I think of them a lot. But their real name were the Shermans, and they were the owners of the ranch that sold the ranch to Bob Bigelow. But there was a big mystery when they bought the ranch. They found these locks all over the doors and chains, and it was just really weird. And nobody has been able to explain what the hell was going on with all those locks. It was very creepy when they first bought that ranch from the Myers family. And finally, this sheriff who comes out to the ranch is able to give an explanation for all those locks. Aliens. That is what the patriarch of the Myers family, who was a friend of his, told him when he would go out. He was, go out horse riding with this guy. And Myers told him that, yeah, he would get visitors, alien visitors. Now, the Sherman family also reported a lot of unusual activity, and that's detailed in George Knapp's book. And they also reported a lot of unusual poltergeist-like activity, which is really interesting, and it is what first got me to take the idea of poltergeist seriously. I had no belief in ghost or poltergeist or the supernatural in any fashion before I came across the account of the Shermans and Skinwalker Ranch. So I thought it was really interesting that the idea of poltergeist arose during this episode. I think this may be the first or among the first times the words poltergeist or ghost were used on this show, on The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. So I thought that was really cool, and I do hope they go more into that at a future point. But so this sheriff is saying that the Myers had locks on the door because they were receiving alien visitors, alien visitations, strange things were going on, and it seems like the Mr. Myers may have been a little paranoid about it, deservedly paranoid. But he had his car chained up, he had everything chained up. Honestly, I don't think the aliens are going to be put off by some locks and chains. I mean, these guys can go through walls. So, whatever. I totally get it, though. If I had aliens breaking into my house, I'd probably lock it up tight, too. But that explains the locks and the chains that the Shermans found when they took over the property. I thought that was really neat. I've wondered for years what the hell was going on with the locks and the chains, and finally I get an answer to that. So I was really, I really enjoyed that. I really appreciated that. So I'm glad they were able to get that sheriff out there. And he had some other interesting things to say as well. There was a really great incident with some heifers, so some cows, that corresponds to an incident that the Shermans had. The Shermans were, wandering around their property. When they came back, they couldn't find their prize bulls, and they found them in this pen where they could not have gotten into by themselves, and they were as if asleep. I mean, they were just standing there like frozen in time. You can't get 4 bulls in a small pen like that without them killing each other. And of course, as soon as they were found, they re-awoke and they went crazy and they started demolishing this pen. And then they escaped and went out, and they were all damaged. And you can see pictures of them if you go online and you search for those pictures. You can see these shell-shocked, freaked out, damaged bulls that have seen some shit, and you can just tell by looking at these guys. So there is a very similar incident that happened to the Myers family. It's even crazier than the Sherman family incident. They found in this small enclosure they had, they found 3 cows, and this was in the presence of the sheriff. The sheriff was there, and he was participating in this. They were looking for the cows. There was a little barn or a little pen, and they open it up, and he is there when they find 3 cows stacked one on top of the other. I assume that means they're stacked on each other's shoulders and backs. So there are that's what he says. There are three cows stacked one on top of the other. And at first, Mr. Myers thinks they're dead, but the sheriff points out they still have mucus running out of their nose, so they're not dead. And they throw some water on the cows, and they wake up and freak out, and they're alive, and that's the end of the story. But how did they get stacked up like that? Oh, what was the deal? That is really interesting because that is the phenomenon repeating itself. Such a similar incident to what happened to the Shermans, and with completely different participants and different people reporting this. So it's not the same people making up the story. So it gives more credence to the account of the Shermans that had that incident, and it has an extra layer of literally an extra layer of dimension. We got the three cows stacked on each other. So that was really interesting. What is the deal? Why are the visitors doing this? Are they just playing pranks? Is that a prank? Was that a gotcha? Is that their sense of humor? Were they trying to scare the family away? Were they trying to engage them or interact with them? Were they trying to provoke fear because they enjoy the fear response? Were they trying to provoke amusement because they enjoy the amusement response? Until the phenomenon explains itself, we're not going to know. I really wish the phenomenon would start explaining itself because this is just really puzzling behavior. What do you think? What caused the cows to be stacked one on top of the other? Or do you think they're just making it all up and this is all BS? And if you do believe the cows are stacked one on top of the other and that the Shermans had a similar experience, why do you think the aliens or the visitors, whatever you want to call them, why do you think they are doing this? I would love to know your theories about what the aliens are up to, or the visitors. I like to call them the visitors because I don't even want to presuppose they're aliens. They could be ultra-terrestrials. They could be humans from another dimension or parallel Earth or the future, or who knows. So I like to use the word the visitors. But let's move on. There were also some cattle mutilations during the time of the Myers that the sheriff is able to report on. And, it's your typical cattle mutilations in some ways, but it does seem to have some variations on the typical mutilation in other ways. There's bloodless. The female organs are removed. He says the skulls were removed, which is a new one on me. I'm not used to the skulls being removed. Often the flesh is removed from the skulls or part of the flesh. Often the lip is torn away. And sometimes the tongue is missing. Stuff like that. But he said the actual skulls were removed. He didn't say the heads were removed. They weren't decapitated. He said the skulls. Does that mean there was just a big pile of flesh where their heads were and there were no bones? That seems to be the implication. They don't go into any details on that, but that is a new wrinkle in the whole alien mutilation thing, or the cattle mutilation thing. If you've heard about that, let me know. I would love to see more cases where the skulls were removed. I have seen multiple cases where the hearts were removed from within the sac that the heart sits in the cow's chest, without puncturing the sac, which seems to indicate the heart was beamed out of the sac or somehow transported out of that sac. It was not surgically removed, or if it was seamlessly repaired so that you couldn't even tell there had been a surgical incision. All possible. They also do a laser test of the old ranch houses, the Homestead 2 specifically. I believe that is where the DIA agent saw the floating Mobius loop. And that, of course, is what launched the Pentagon's interest in Skinwalker Ranch, which only ended when Bob Bigelow sold the property, as far as I know. Now, I think, and I have reason to believe, that they are still interested in it. They are just not controlling the events there. They don't see anything in Homestead 2, and they shine the light from Homestead 2 onto the other Homestead, Homestead 3. And maybe we'll get more about that in the next episode, but it doesn't seem like they found much. Actually, I take that back, because they did have a teaser where they talked about their readings being off when they did that investigation. So I'll belay any comment on that. They did have an experience where, while they were investigating Homestead 2, they saw a light off in the distance, and they went to chase it. It was probably just an intruder, there's a lot of people that are interested in Skinwalker Ranch, and probably somebody saw the weird lights and thought they would go and check it out. And I'm surprised that the security is that porous on Skinwalker Ranch that people can just get in and out without them knowing there's an intruder. I'm not surprised at all that there are intruders, but I am a little surprised they don't have better security, where at least they would know for sure, one way or another, whether there was a human intruder or not. Anyway, that was pretty much it for the third episode. It was a good, solid episode with some really interesting stuff. We got some historical mysteries solved, like the chains on the door. We have a confirmation of the Sherman story of the cows in the pen, the bulls in the pen, because the same thing happened to the Myers, only a little different, with the cows stacked on top of each other, which is a really interesting wrinkle, I thought. And another wrinkle in the cattle mutilation situation, and different sorts of cattle mutilations there, but with broad commonalities of the other cattle mutilations. And so a really good episode. I wish that the laser experiment had produced more results. Maybe we'll get more in the next episode. I do hope that goes somewhere. That would be really cool. On the other hand, you would think that the visitors, the phenomenon, would be able to prevent any investigation into it that it did not want. When it reveals itself, it seems to want to reveal itself. But, that is reading into it. Who the hell knows? Until the phenomenon, tells us what's going on, we won't know. However, it is possible that continuing to investigate it and provoking the phenomenon could theoretically get it to come forward and tell us what is going on. I really hope something like that does happen. But anyway, that was this episode. It was a good episode. What did you think about it? Is it the best episode of the season? Is it the worst episode of the season? What do you think about all the strange phenomena that was happening? And where is the series going from here? Please hit like, please subscribe, comment below about all of those things, and of course share on social media. I'm trying to build this channel, and that really helps a lot. Until next time, Mystery Road out.